You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done.
And the people that make it happen.
And that's what makes it so much fun.
It does. It makes it a lot of fun. And we try and focus on business and success. And our topic today is about people who don't fit. And because we focus on success, we decided to frame the topic around Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
I'm a huge fan of Malcolm. He is my business crush. Did you know that?
Yes, I know. I've heard this before. He's your
I
business
can't help it. You know, I'm a sapiophile. I like really smart people. He's got a great sense of humor. He's an awesome writer, and I love his revisionist history podcast. He's probably one of the best storytellers I know. He's just fabulous.
He's
So,
everything
just
for
saying.
Rona. So I
sorry.
suppose you're
Sorry.
gonna. I suppose you're gonna promote his podcast now.
I just said that. Revisionist history. Yes.
Oh, I wasn't listening to you.
I
I
know,
tuned
he
out.
does- yeah, he
Totally
does that.
tuned out at the point where he's just your
Sorry.
absolute
He's
business
he's
crush.
my business crush. Yes. Anyway, so we're
We're talking about people
Yeah.
who don't fit. And so what happened was we talked about people that don't fit, and then we decided to frame it around outliers. And then I started thinking, okay, well, who else doesn't fit?
right.
And then you said,
Rebels.
yes. And once again, you think rebels are?
Sexy. You know, not all rebels. This is not like a James Dean rebel without a cause thing. Although
Well, he was cute.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was very, very cute, and it was a great movie. And a lot of rebels don't have a cause. They just know that they have
They
certain
want to be
things-
different.
right? That they want to be different, which is
Why they don't fit.
We're gonna right exactly, and we're gonna talk about that in a second. And it's you don't. It's not always about being that sexy. I need to be different. I need to stand out. And so let's talk a little bit more.
Well,
about
and
that.
Malcolm doesn't talk about sexy.
No,
at
not
all.
at all.
Not at
Not
all.
at all.
In his book, he's just talking about some of the differences, and he's kind of put.
There's a pandemic, and we haven't been out much, so I just think differently. So anyway, so go ahead.
So, and we're going to cover 3 questions
Yes.
in the thing. What is the difference between an outlier and a rebel? And what drives outliers to make their vision a reality? And how can you guide your rebel tendencies to outlier
The
tendencies?
rebel, the vicious rebel tendencies.
Yeah, so we're already throwing rebels under the bus here.
We
so
are.
we've
We
got to know outliers.
We don't mean to, but
It's
and-
if you're in Vegas and you're betting outliers,
that's true. They
you
win.
know they're winning by 10 points. So at least that. So.
All right. So what is the difference between an outlier and a rebel?
So, well, let's start. His definition of outliers again. You know,
Okay.
it's about circumstances, family, and hard work. So except he talks about kids, and that's where he says it kind of starts. And in his book, he's got the hockey story where he's talking about the kids and being what month they're born, and that gives them an advantage over time.
Yeah.
And that's where the hard work comes in. So at the time, though, when they're kids. They've got an opportunity. So, and if they're a bigger kid or the circumstances. So we've all had opportunities in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I had opportunities in my life. You've had opportunities in your life.
Of course. And there's the vision of what they want too, right?
Well, and I think kids have a vision. I think when kids play, they play for real, and they play it as if this is the greatest thing in life. Like one of the things I was interested in kids is models.
Yeah.
And the models I wanted were interested in the movies I was most fascinated with. So movies about Dracula, the old Bela Lugosi, and Frankenstein, and with Boris Karloff, and the Mummy, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon. And I got the models, and I'd paint them up. And my dad was real supportive of that. He thought it was doing something with your hands, and then I would follow through, and he could get involved because we'd have to get all the pieces in because, I wouldn't throw that in. And so I was really excited about that. And down the road, in the 80s, man, Dracula movies and the horror
The
movies.
Vampire Diaries, all of them. Yeah.
And the script writers, the people who are writing that, they're famous and they're making gads of money, and the actors that are involved in it are making all kinds of money. And so where was Jeffrey in all this?
I don't know. Jeffrey, where were you?
Well, I didn't get support from my dad. After a while, it was like, when are you going to get rid of those stupid things? And I didn't get, and at school, in grade school, write a story about some fantasy you have or something that's going on, or write a short story. I mean, and so I would write about vampires. Mm-hmm. And, after about the third vampire story, the teacher's going, Jeffrey, really, vampires aren't real. Can't you write about something else? So I didn't get the support. So the circumstances didn't work for me. So therefore, I'm not bringing you a horror movie, except for this podcast.
No. This is a fun podcast. It's a fun business podcast. I actually had a story from my past that I didn't get that kind of support when I was deciding on a major. I wanted to do the more artsy, theater arts sort of thing. And my mom, my dad too, but my mom was like the real strong one in the family. Jewish mother from New York. Oh no, you are not going to be a theater major. All right, her accent wasn't quite that strong, but it's funnier this way. So she's like, you're not a singer. And you don't dance, so that you can't be a triple threat. Not even, and I'm 16 years old, 17, and I don't know any different. So I was like, all right, now you're gonna be some kind of a business major just in case your husband can't afford to support you. Great way to think like a modern woman. Fantastic. And if they were paying for my college education, I became an advertising major, so that I could be creative and have that business background. And I know it's hard to believe that, I'm not theatrical at all. I'm just very businesslike. And I just think that's why I'm into play, because it brings that theatrical fun into business. So, and I wasn't able to follow my vision and my dream because I didn't have that family support. That's my long-winded support.
No, it's good. It's a good story.
Yeah.
So we both have a passion, and I still have a passion about writing, and a passion about telling stories and those things. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it. It's just not that driven passion that these outliers get. Mm-hmm. The other thing, though, is why are these two stories relevant? Well, in my case, while I was fascinated with Dracula well into sixth grade, junior high, the other kids that I was around, they dropped it. It was no longer in style. They were into other things. They were into rock and roll. They were into growing up. And so because of that, I just didn't have that deep desired commitment, and I was letting circumstances outside myself kind of dilute my passion. And I didn't have to. It was a choice. And I also think I was that way a little because I didn't fit. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like I didn't fit. And so I was trying to find where I would fit. And I think Rebels and Outliers are the same, which I think there are similarities between them.
I agree. There are a lot of similarities,
Did dance and drama have anything to do with you not looking for a place to fit in, or where you didn't fit and just decided to be different? Because I remember distinctly friends saying, "Oh, I don't want to watch Dracula movie again," or "I don't want to do models or stuff." I think they grew out of it, and I still wanted to do it. But
I still did it. I got my SAG card eventually way after college, and I was married and divorced and got the SAG card in between there. I never lost my passion for it, and my mom brought the point that was much more down to earth, that if I want to make a living on my own, for me it wasn't about finding a husband. first and foremost. It was, what else can I do that, I could make myself happy. And that's why I went into advertising, because I thought it would be fun, but I didn't have that same kind of passion and push for it.
So going back to the fit thing though, did you feel like so that's one of the connections. So
Yes,
I think Outliers and Rebels both they don't feel they fit.
yes, and I never felt that that I quite fit in the advertising world. When I was too dramatic, and I got in trouble a little bit with the in that sort of business world.
So, and I think that's where all of us, all of us have a little bit of Outlier and all of us have a little bit of Rebel. And I think that once you get that bug, you always keep it forever.
Yeah.
I think Outliers and Rebels, the true ones that are going down the path. So I think they both start off in the same path.
I agree.
And they go down it. And that starts probably early.
Well, and yeah, I think that's, it's that childlike enthusiasm for things.
Yeah, and he talks about Malcolm Gladwell talks about Bill Gates, and he talks about Bill just getting involved in computers, and he was supported in that by his family, and he was supported by the school, and then because he worked hard at it, he became good at it, and then he got hired for jobs and things like that. Mm-hmm. So he was supported in that nature, and I'm sure he got criticism for it, because I remember at that time, nobody's, you were kind of a geeky, and that's one of the first things, are you a geek? And then, they were criticized, and then they came out with all the geek movies and how great geeks were and wonderful. I think when it started, though, they did feel different. I think Rebels actually relish in that, and Outliers too. When they're very passionate, I don't think it matters. I don't think you care.
So, well, all right, so let me ask you this: why do you think they end up in different places?
I think it's their approach.
Do you?
I think it's the way they go about it. I think Rebels are maybe they're more eye-centric. Maybe they're doing it for themselves, because it was kind of like, I remember, when the models had to go away and when I had to stop writing stories, I was angry for a while.
Yeah.
And I felt like acting out and rebelling. And for all those, just please take this with a grain of salt out there. It's like, people that get tattoos. Mm-hmm. Some people get one tattoo and it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to be different. And then other people go bonkers with them and they get tattoos everywhere. And I think the difference is, an outlier is looking at something that can maybe change the world, whereas that eye-centric type of rebel is just thinking about their own circumstances.
I agree. I think outliers tend to be less emotional, more objective, and taking them. They kind of look for the greater good, as opposed to, I'm really pissed off and I'm going to do this just because. There's a method. Whereas rebels just they're emotionally blind.
Yeah, and so they miss things.
Yeah.
And maybe that developed. So I think outliers also develop good habits. Like Bill Gates in Malcolm Gladwell's book talks about Bill Gates and just finding time to get on the computer. And they wanted more time on it and more time on it, and constantly, and he had to constantly think, how could he get more time on it? And one of the ways to get more time on it was to start doing work on it. So he didn't do work to make money. He kind of took up work projects so he'd get more time on the computer.
Yeah. Well, and I think outliers tend to be solution oriented.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, they could be. Very, very well.
Well, you told me a story about Steve Jobs.
Well, yeah, and this is interesting about Steve Jobs when he started off. And this, I've got this all secondhand from all the stories that go on. Yes, I started, my first professional career was Apple Computer. And so Steve, I think Steve's first stint at Apple, Steve Jobs' first stint at Apple was I think he was kind of a rebel. I think he was in a rebel mind frame. And I think it was very I-centric what he wanted to do.
Yeah,
And
I read his biography, and I agree with you from what I.
yeah, it's easy to talk about him because he's no longer here. So, he might
Yes,
have a different issue on that. So who knows, though? What amazed me, though, and what's always amazed me, and this is where having uh, maybe understanding him a little, because I could relate to that kind of rebel. Let's do things differently. Let's be a little different. I don't care if I'm different. I'm going to promote my differences, which is kind of rebellish in its nature. What always amazed me is that Mike Markle basically said, "Hey, we want the majority of your company. If we're going to build a company around you and Steve Wozniak, we're going to be the majority shareholders. So you're going to give away what 80% of the company."
Yikes.
And to think of the ego and where Jobs was as a rebel, how he ever came to the decision to say yes to that is beyond me, because that to me is just a leap. And that's what eventually I think that kind of thinking and that ability to do that is what made him a true outlier when he came back the second time. And I think he was, and a few other things, and we could talk about those later.
Okay.
So
Right. Yeah, but I do agree. It's from what I've read about him, and what we know, he was a bit of a narcissist who was able to flip and see the greater good for what he was doing. So that's pretty impressive.
yeah, anybody come to mind for you that maybe was a rebel and went to an outlier, or somebody that was an outlier all along, or maybe do you know anything about what they?
Well, I was trying to think of women who because outliers tend to
You mean
be.
other than Malcolm Gladwell? Not
Well,
as a
he's
woman.
not a woman.
Not as a woman.
You're not
I'm
a
trying
woman,
to think of
Malcolm.
another
Don't
person.
let him diss you like that.
Totally out of context. That's not what I meant at all. I just meant you were thinking about someone else.
I was
I was
thinking
trying to
about
think
someone
about somebody other than Malcolm.
Oprah is, she. I don't know that she was a rebel per se. I don't think she started out like that. She just knew she wanted something more. I mean, this is a woman who was born to a teenaged, an unmarried teenaged mom in Mississippi, and she was molested at 14. She got pregnant and unfortunately lost. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not going to go into that. When you're 14, that's a whole other thing.
Oh, wait, we have text coming in from Planned
That's
Parenthood,
right.
and we have text coming in from, all right, never
The
mind,
right to
okay.
choose. Anyway, so she ended up, getting involved in radio when she was in high school. She knew she wanted to, bring herself to a wider audience, and then she became at 19. She was a co-host in Chicago of the evening news. I think it was the evening news. Anyway, if I'm wrong, you'll tell me. I'm pretty sure it was. And then she built it up. She went into the talk show genre, took the third rated show in Chicago to the first, and then went national. Has her own network, started her own Oprah production, Harpo rather, production company. Became, I think in 2007 she was like the richest woman in the world. I mean, she changed the face of talk shows. She made them much more intimate and more confession but when you listen to the people she interviews, it's like you're the only people in the room. It's not like the old, and I'm dating myself, I was very, very young, like in the womb, when like the Mike Douglas show and all those came in, and they were like sitting apart. Even Johnny Carson, that they still sit apart from them, whereas Oprah really talks to them and brings out. It's like the old Barbara Walters stuff that what kind of a tree are you? I'm kidding. That's not what Oprah did, and Oprah is an awesome outlier because she pushed through because she believed in her vision, and she has changed the world in her in her business world.
So, and that's an interesting point because when you said you're thinking she did it different than Mike Douglas and those guys, yeah, yeah, maybe that's why she called it Harpo Productions because Groucho with his kids was it? No, that was Art Linklater. Well, what did Groucho do? Didn't he do?
Well, he did not Whose Line in It. He had a game show.
He had a
Game
game
show
show.
in
It
in the
was Art
50s, I think.
Linklater. So it
Yeah,
was Art Linklater. So
Art
there's no
Linklater.
connection there. So please, hey, research team, get
But
your act together.
we digress.
There's no point
We
there.
weren't
What the heck?
alive when these shows were on, so we're just bringing them.
I was. I don't have to hide. Well, and what I was going to say too, I was going to lead from that story to Dick Cavett. Dick Cavett had conversations.
He was very smart, yeah.
And he had conversation with people. So it's not that she was different. And the same thing with Bill. He's not the first person that got interested in computers. He just happened to be one person that got interested in the computers. And then he stuck with it and stayed with it.
Right.
So, and I think it's that process that really separates the outliers from the rebels. The rebels have an idea, they have a concept. Outliers have a system, and they're dedicated to the system.
And I'm going to bring you back to one thing, just in case anybody doesn't know this. The Groucho Harpo Marx thing. The reason Oprah called it Harpo Productions is it's her name backwards.
It is?
Yes,
I
it
did
is.
not know that.
We learned something new. Yeah, see, a lot of people don't know that, but if you flip it, there you go. Yay.
Okay, very good.
I taught him something.
I'll bet
you guys.
I'll bet
It's on tape. I taught
tape.
him something.
Yeah, well, not only that, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are going to go, "Oh man, he should know that stuff."
Not necessarily, but it's
right.
a good thing to know. Okay.
So the next question we have is what drives outliers to make their vision a reality? So we've talked about maybe some of the things that come up, and we've talked about how they do it, maybe with a system and a process.
Yeah.
What drives them really to do that, though? Because they're going to face criticism, they're going to face failure, they're going to have frightening situations. So and again, is there a difference? Do rebels, rebels just seem to fight back. And
Well,
it's almost like a reactive.
Yeah. Well, they're I interrupted you. I'm so sorry. They're extrinsically motivated. They care so much about what other people think. Whereas I think outliers have a vision and a belief in themselves and follow through to make it happen.
So extrinsically motivated rebels, you're saying that they're reactive to the outside world.
Yeah.
And they're constantly, the outside world is a reference, whereas outliers have this intrinsic need or vision, this intrinsic vision and belief, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, didn't Bill Gates say he doesn't care what other people think?
I don't know
or
if he actually
something like that, or he does. I mean, he doesn't. I don't know if yeah, you're right. I don't know if he's actually said that. But.
I don't know if that's the case. I'd love to talk to him again. I did help or tried to get Bill a date at Comdex. That was a long time ago before he met Marla. Well, I guess he needs my services. Melinda? Oh, Melinda. I guess he needs my services now.
There you go. Bill, he's your hookup.
Yeah, and Melinda's probably going to call me and go, "You knew Marla?" So, who knows? I step into stuff all the time.
Who's Marla?
I don't think she cares at this point.
I don't think so either.
I think she's one and done on that one. One and done on that one. So, poor Bill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Poor Bill. I do not feel sorry for Bill Gates. And I happen to be a big fan of Bill Gates. I think he's doing a lot of phenomenal things. I think both, the whole their whole foundation is doing fantastic things. And I think the foundation itself is a form of outlying, outliers.
They're trying to get water they're trying to figure out ways to get water and power and all the basic essentials to parts of the world that don't have consistency in that area or have to spend most of their day, dragging water from one place to another.
So how do we take people who have rebel tendencies and flip them to outlier tendencies?
So, well, one of the things is I think you have to look for systems. And first thing, obviously, I think you made the greatest point. You have to take that extrinsic motivation, turn it to an intrinsic. You need to find something inside you that drives you, and that needs to become the focus for you're doing this because there's something inside you, a desire to contribute, a desire to make something different, a desire that says, the systems that like Bezos, the systems out there are not acceptable in any fashion, and I'm going to come up with a better system.
Yeah. And I think a lot of these people who we were just talking about, and all of them, not everyone's going to like them for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter to them, which is awesome.
No, and they get a lot of flack for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I've heard both sides of the point. I mean, this morning, 2 different places, I had somebody telling me that she can't believe I buy stuff from Amazon because they treat their employees bad. And I just had somebody else saying, yeah, if you make $180,000 at Amazon, it's like making $280,000 because of all the benefits and the perks they do and the things they do. Yeah, they expect hard work from people. And, on an hourly wage, it's, if you're on an hourly wage, everything's always harder.
Right. Yeah. That's why we're consultants. And that's why we don't fit in, because we're consultants.
Because we're consultants, we work for free a lot. We spend so much time trying to get stuff going and work and all the hours. You can't, anyway.
I know,
it's a whole different story.
I'm teasing. We are rebels in a sense, and I have a big vision for play. I don't know how, and that's why we're working together, is to get play out there in a bigger way. We just haven't figured it out quite yet, so we're still working on it. But okay, we need to get back to the final points. Again, I digress. So what are our final points?
So look. So follow your passions, and they have to be your passions, not passions that are created because other people say you can't do that. So I think it has to be passion, and you need to also turn your passions into very specific objectives. So it's not just a goal like I'm going to get another tattoo, or I'm going to get more rings, or I'm going to get more tattoos. It's kind of a vision of how could I make. Maybe it would be a vision like, how could I give people the opportunity to have tattoos they could turn on and off? I mean, that would be like changing. And
wow.
So you go out at night and you just flip a switch on your arm and your tattoos appear. And then you switch.
Be like the bionic tattooed person.
Yeah, exactly. It's on and off switch.
There you go. Would be and you have to be a vampire, evidently.
Obviously, or Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster. Please step up.
There you go. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Yeah, and I'm going to stick with my why are you doing this, the extrinsically versus intrinsic motivation, and I think outliers look for the bigger picture, for the greater good, and how can we make life better.
Well, and that intrinsic motivation, again, it's because that's how I think you deal with the fears. I don't think they don't care. I think it hurts. We're all humans. I think these guys, no matter how much money, I think they're bothered by it. They shouldn't read their press releases.
Yeah, nobody should read their own press, because
we
would never do this again.
Exactly. So that intrinsic is the drive that just keeps them on a kind of a higher plane.
There you go.
Anything else?
I think we have pretty much covered it. If you guys have any questions for us about this subject or any of the others that we have covered in our podcast, let us know. You can email us at bizsoulspodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. And
you're ending this, aren't you?
I am ending this.
I had a final point.
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
No,
it's the Rona show.
No.
It's
and the final point. I'm sorry. I thought you were handing it off to me. My bad, Jeffrey. I always want to know your thoughts.
Well, I think the biggest, if you want to if you want to guide your rebel tendencies to outlier, I think it is have that intrinsic, clear, specific target that you want to achieve. And I also think you have to develop a systematic approach to it.
You are very into systems, and
I love
appreciate
systems.
that. And I, full disclosure, he's much more organized with stuff than I am when we make plans for our business, and I appreciate it because I'm kind of
Loosey goosey.
it's improv, It's that's what and that doesn't always work.
She's not telling the truth at all. She has a crush on Malcolm, and she spends most of her time thinking
That is
about
not
Malcolm.
true.
And it's like Malcolm this and Malcolm that and Malcolm. By the way, Malcolm, if you see this podcast, this is your number one fan.
That's me.
All right.
You can end it now. Fine. No, I already did my ending. That's your turn.
No, that your ending works for me, guys. Yeah, have fun, ladies and gentlemen.
This is us. We are the Biz-Souls podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.
Right.
Here we go. Off we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Biz-Souls. We get to the heart and soul. I don't know. I forgot what it is. We get
Here
the heart
we
and soul
go
of
again.
heart and soul of business and the people who